We are team 9 and we are presenting Starbucks. We're actually looking at how leading with purpose and how the founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, actually made a very important decision that affected Starbucks, its employees, the community, and everybody that is affected. Now, we are looking at Starbucks was created in 1971 by Howard Schultz after he made a decision not to have a company that would not provide for the employees' welfare. And the company grew from that initial foundation to about 11 stores in 1987, and then in 2025 to about 40,000 plus stores globally. Starbucks became a place where it was important that they had a community or an environment that was okay for people to come in, reflect, sit down, chat with people. The baristas knew the customers. They had a good communication. It was a place that the atmosphere was okay, and it wasn't just a place for just coming to have coffee. The stakeholders at Starbucks were the partners, the customers, the community, and then the farmers. The partners, which were the employees, were referred to as partners. The Starbucks provided healthcare for them, being stock, and then college plan as well. And then in effect, the turnover of the company then increased from 65% to 150%. Also, the customers that were the community and all had a 70% increase in visits due to the ambience and then the atmosphere that was created by Starbucks. In effect, there was incentive of over 30 million people that got rewards, and eventually it increased the trust in the brand. And the community also that was introduced had stores that had refugee and veterans that were employed, and then it brought back the human connection, even after the crisis and after the fact that Starbucks had initial trouble and all that. The farmers on their own, there was the introduction of the cafe principle, and then this practice helped the farmers grow ethical coffee beans that was sustainable, and that even when it was predicted that there could be a climate change that could threaten the quality of the soil and land, they did not, it wouldn't have had any much effect on them because they had inculcated all of this into their practices and was going to help them reflect and have a better produce at the end of the day. The great thing Starbucks did for its partners was in 1988, there was Healthcare for Everyone. In 1991, there was Beanstalk for its partners also. In 2014, there was College Incentive, which is actually unheard in any of the industries. However, there were also risks involved. The risks involved were there were increased costs, there was pressure to reverse the decision, and then there was also issue in maintaining the decision globally.
So now we will talk about the supply chain of Starbucks. Starbucks has introduced cafe practices in 2004. Why they have introduced cafe practices? Because they wanted transparency in payment which they make to their workforce, and they also want to provide rights to the labor in terms of providing proper education and healthcare systems. They do also like to maintain the climate conditions. They want to protect the soil by including biodiversity. And what are the risks if they haven't introduced the cafe practices? One risk would be like there is a future prediction of 50% of land would be reduced in terms of coffee production if the land is not protected. And as we know, poor quality of seeds doesn't fetch the Starbucks the premium. And if they don't have ethical sourcing of coffee beans, the brand trust will be eroded.
2008, the global financial crisis hit. Starbucks stores went from $40 a share to $7 a share. 600 stores got closed up. 12,000 job losses. The board and the shareholders demanded that the CEO should cut the healthcare for the part-time workers. What would a reasonable CEO do? He would have complied. But Phil said something. No. And he said, what would the price of our souls be? Healthcare for us is not a cost item, it's our culture. The trade-off table shows that healthcare for part-time workers on the short term, it's 10 to 15% of labor cost. But on the longer term, it increased from 65% to 150 industry turnover, and it takes $6,000 per partner. The CFA practice, as you can see, higher selling cost on the short term. On the longer term, supply security versus 50% land loss risk by 2050. You see, purpose-driven leadership sacrifice short-term margin to build longer-term assets. What does the data now show? Does the trade-off pay off?
What was the measurable impact in Starbucks' decisions? Pick by the values rather than take over all the ethical complaints and all the feedback they got from the shareholders, the stakeholders over time. Starbucks experienced a 36 billion increase in the fiscal year of 2024. Also, they experienced a 150% partner turnover in average. And also, they also gained 82% score ratings. Over the years, we've seen Starbucks grow their store presence across the board from 11 to 40,000 stores. What has this also given to Starbucks? Giving them brand reputation, employee loyalty, and also the pricing power. It's not just a brand, they are selling their value.
Where action contributes value, one of the high risks was the union conflict. The contradiction between partners and Starbucks itself. So hundreds of US stores voted to unionize.
Purpose of premium strategy. What happens when customers start saying he adjusts the proper brand strategy to increase price rather than serve good copy at premium prices at a cheaper price? Back to accessibility and the top paradox, which Starbucks stood all the while for, saying Starbucks is not just a store, it's a community, it's a place where you go, you feel relaxed. Does this now contradict with that same value that we've kept all through their timelines?
So far, so good. As a team, what has Starbucks taught us?
So Starbucks has taught us purpose must shape real decisions. Like back in time, Starbucks has given healthcare for part-timers and they have allocated bean stocks and they have also started fair practices.
Purpose is tested during crisis. Starbucks stock fell from $40 to $7 per share in 2008. Investors demanded cut. What has this taught us? Identify in advance which elements of your purpose are non-negotiable, defend them even from your account.
Starbucks have taught us to be an ecosystem around your partners, which are creative staffs, stakeholders, the community, the customer desires, make it a community, an ecosystem that serves people.
Finally, purpose is not what the company says it is. It is what leadership has forgone as from what is deemed as the most expensive. Thank you. Okay, guys. So for this course, what are our individual reflections? What has this course taught us individually? And how do you think it would impact in your future as a leader?
Well, I think this course has actually taught us that leadership is more of not just words, it's more of what you show to people, how you drive values, and what values you project, and if you stick to your core values.
Okay, for me, it's like leadership is not about only internal process. Like you should have to think about all the stakeholders involved in the supply chain. Like leadership shouldn't be confined only to the internal process. It should be taken care of employees, all the stakeholders which are involved in your business. So going forward, how do I apply this learning? Is like if I am ever going to establish a company, I'm not only going to take care of just my profits and my revenues. I would take care of my employees and all the stakeholders who are involved in the business.
For me, culture is something that leaders do consistently. And when that is done, we have to ensure that it is embedded in day-to-day decisions and what is done on daily basis by all the people that I work with. And for me, I think it's very important as a leader that leadership is not just about calling the shot. It's also you being sensitive to people, to your workers and everybody around you. I think this is very important.
And also, leadership for me shows we have to be empathetic towards our subordinates. So it's not about making the tough decisions, but also to be considerate and consider everybody in and around us just to impact each and everybody in a positive way and to motivate ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.